Hey everyone, Joel here with Dissecting DIY, and today I wanted to go over the video that you're about to see. So you can see the light fixtures behind me. This is something that my wife bought. I always caution her about buying fixed LED because I just don't think they last as long, and in this case they didn't. My wife loved the way these looked and obviously had to have them, so of course I installed them and they worked great for the time that they did work. The problem is they did end up having a short lifespan. About, I think we've had these 2 or 3 years, and even within that time span, a lot of people will just go out and buy something. We weren't able to go out and buy these again. They don't make them. We couldn't find them, and my wife really loved them, didn't want to replace them, hated all the options that she saw. Of course, you just stick anything up there and I'd be happy because I have light. Me function over aesthetic or look, and my wife is look over function or aesthetic function. So my wife wanted to know if these could be modified to accept the light socket. So the first one that I took apart, it was more of an investigation of if it could be done, and I actually found that the original design for these actually incorporated a light socket that accepts an incandescent bulb. So they were originally designed for that. So when I found that, I was actually able to screw this in, and this heat sink and this fixture here, I was able to screw in no problem, no additional parts, nothing needed. But when I did take them apart, or even before I took them apart, I always noticed that I couldn't get continuity no matter how much paint I scratched off with my ground. So this is metal, but paint can deteriorate over time, and it can create bare spots in the metal, where if you touch them and if they become energized, you could get shocked. So what you'll see me do in the video, and it'll make sense when you see it, is because I couldn't get continuity from this ground where it basically attaches to the metal fixture to this ground, I extended the ground to this bolt here to this here, so that way there was a pathway if it ever shorted out for electricity to flow to ground as opposed through you. So a lot of people always are making fun of electricians for being sticklers about this stuff, and an electrician is always dealing or trying to deal with Murphy's Law. Okay, if a plumber makes a mistake, maybe you get a stinky drain, maybe get a structure falling apart depending how they made their cuts. If a carpenter makes a mistake, things like that, they're typically not as deadly as electricity. And that's what electricians are trying to do. They're trying to save you from future problems. And this is why they're such sticklers about like electrical sockets. Don't ever change an electrical socket or switch yourself. You hire an electrician. I was like, why would you say that? It's such an easy thing to do. And it is pretty easy. Anyone can do it so long as you know what you're doing. And point in case, if you are putting in an electrical socket, and like a lot of electricians will use flathead screwdrivers. People, well, why not use the Phillips? Well, a lot of times I've noticed is, as long as you make sure your loop is going with the turn of the screw when tightening, so it sucks in, that's something to know. And then using the flathead to make sure it's nice and tight. Maybe that socket's going to heat up and cool down over time, and for some reason or another it just loosens and you get arcing. Those are the things that they know how to do. And some people might just, they have their Phillips head, it's tight enough, throw it in there. Next thing you know, you're getting arcs and things in that box, and it can be dangerous. Maybe not that day, but down the road. And electricians are always trying to future-proof and make sure that anything that can and will go wrong has a way to protect you from it. And that's what electricians are trying to do, and they might seem like jerks sometimes, but there is a method to it. I actually talked to my cousin who is an electrician. Of course, his whole thing was like, just buy a new fixture. Why are you doing this? And of course I told him, and he understood. And one of the things that he wanted to bring up is, when that left the factory, it's made to a certain standard. And if you modify that, you got to make sure that all the safety standards that were there are the same. So, because if you ever sell your house or do anything like that, now, I did do this video, and by the time that I had the video completed, my wife actually found replacements. So these other replacements, which obviously look identical, we did end up buying new ones, but I did want to make the video showing you that yes, this can be done. And you know, I just wanted to show you how I brought that to ground, and or made sure there was a pathway for ground, and how modifying these things can alter them in such a way that they can be dangerous. So that being said, if you are unfamiliar with electrical or any of the sort, you should not proceed with any project on your own. You should hire a professional. This video is meant for entertainment purposes only, and you will see that warning throughout this video, warning you that any type of work around electrical that you are unfamiliar with can lead to injury or death of yourself or others. So again, I do not recommend proceeding with electrical work if you are unfamiliar with it. Guys, again, this video is meant for entertainment purposes only. Sit back and enjoy the video, and if you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw, give it a thumbs down. Tell me what you think. All right, we are starting off where we are taking a fixed LED bulb and turning it back into an incandescent light socket that you can use, obviously, an LED bulb, CFL, or incandescent bulb. So you're gonna get this kit on Amazon. This is, I think, comes in a 4-pack, and then has these little bolts that you can attach things for. We're actually not going to be using them because we're going to be using what this light fixture has. Now this was a fixed LED bulb, and it burnt out probably because all the bugs that got in it. But you can see I've got some needle nose pliers. I'm going to be getting more tools, but Phillips head screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, some wire cutters. Now I'm just showing you this here. You can actually see I've got my ground, my neutral, my hot. And it looks like there's some white rope right here, and you're going to want to save this. You want to make sure that you keep this, because this is going to help prevent your insulator from rubbing against the metal and deteriorating over time, which can obviously cause a short. We're going to remove the glass piece, put it over to the right, and then we're going to take off this. This is more of a visual feature than any type of, it doesn't do anything mechanically, it doesn't hold the light up, but it just makes the light fixture look nice. Then we're going to unscrew the top, and there will be a rubber gasket. You want to hang on to that because you do want this to retain that seal at the top. So we're going to put that over to the right, and then take the gasket off, move that over to the right. Now I do want to apologize for the video quality here. This is 5.3K, not 4K, and it's about 30 FPS. I'm doing this on a GoPro 11. And for some reason, despite the plenty of lighting, it's giving me some trouble. So if you know anything about GoPro 11s, can help me get rid of this, I'd appreciate it. But here you can just see me spinning this off. Now this actually, when you're spinning this piece off, it actually only takes a few turns, and then the wires are holding it on. So I'm trying to figure that out right there, and then I realize I just need to snip the wires, because we're going to be getting rid of this piece. But you want to hang on to that housing. So here I am just snipping the wires. And now you're going to see what I'm talking about with all the bugs. Now these were up for a couple years, and all those bugs got in there. Obviously overheated the LEDs because it didn't have its airflow and heat sink. A heat sink became just kind of like this way for it to heat up, and they burnt out. So that's why we have to fix it. This fixture, I noticed once I get this off, was actually for a regular bulb like the light socket I'm putting in, and they just added this LED piece on top of it. So this is just a plate. It's like a little circuit board with all your capacitors, transistors, things like that, things that step down your voltage, and then all the LEDs are embedded, and we're just going to remove that. So on that piece, you could actually see some heatsink paste that you would find on a CPU, which surprised me. So now we're going to take this piece and slide the wires through, and you're going to have to line this up just right, okay? Because that top piece is threaded. So I threaded it on and I missed the first time, so now I'm reshooting and I'm lining it up just right, making sure that the rope that is protecting my wires and everything spins with it, right? You don't want to keep twisting the wires because that can cause them to break and cause problems. So at the top, you want to try and rotate the wires as you're spinning this on. And for me, it worked pretty well because they actually just spun with it and I didn't have any problems. But that's me lining it up, seeing if I can get the threads. And then I ended up grabbing onto them with, once the top piece was threaded, I was able to thread on the bottom piece. And you just got to keep them really tight together. Otherwise it won't thread and you're going to have to keep retrying. And here I'm just making sure it's really tight and it's on there so it doesn't fall out later on. Because once it's mounted, you'd have to take it apart. Now here I'm just getting all the wires nice and tight because I'm going to have to run it through the top. And we're going to have to ensure that we have a proper ground. Something like this. So the light fixture with the paint, the paint must have acted like an insulator because when I did a continuity test, which I don't have recorded, I wasn't able from where the ground was to get continuity to the bottom of that fixture. So if there's ever a short, right here I'm tightening all the screws and the grounds inside the actual fixture because I loosened up a little bit when I was putting this on. But getting back to it, I wasn't able, even with scratching off some of the paint, I wasn't able to get a proper ground continuity test, which concerned me because if anything were to short on this, so the bottom of this light, basically where this fixture is that I'm holding, doesn't connect to the top where the ground is. If it doesn't connect and you get a short and you're touching that, the power is going to go through you instead of finding the shortest path to ground. So I'm going to work on that. I take this whole thing apart just to take a look at it. I take this ground wire off and just to make sure all my connections are good and that there's no rust or anything like that that's causing any connectivity issues. And then later on I'll do a continuity test once I bond everything. So bonding is where you take a ground wire and make sure that each piece of equipment or each section of that equipment is bonded to ground. And I'm going to show you how to do that the right way and the wrong way. Or the wrong way in the order of this video, the wrong way and the right way. Okay, so here someone might try to use this nut right here, and this nut is really meant to keep this top piece from moving. So that top piece should be flush against the bottom piece so that it can't unscrew. And someone might try to just take a wire and say, hey, I'll just sandwich it between it. But what tends to happen with this is even if you have the wire follow clockwise, the way of tightening, it tends to push it out. And that's exactly what happens here. And you don't want a weak ground connection that can disconnect over time. You want something that's sturdy and that's going to make sure that there's a proper ground. Now, the company that made this, they have the ground to meet minimum code, but without that continuity, without that circuit being completed, it could cause a dangerous situation. And here, of course, you're going to need some wire crimps and some pieces to attach these little loop connectors here. And that way, when I bolt everything down, this connector is going to stay well connected to the bolt and the ground source. It's connected to the light, which is just going to make sure that any type of short circuit, again, that finds the least resistant path to ground as opposed to going through you. And that's what we're just making sure here. It's something I noticed and wanted to make sure was fixed. And this is me just attaching the top wire to the secondary plate or the top plate. And this way, so this bolt that I'm attaching to is actually what my ground on the other side of that, where you make all your connections, is attached to. A quick reminder that any type of electrical work can lead to injury or death if you don't know what you're doing. If you miswire any of this and connect it, it can cause an electric shock, especially in like a rainstorm if you're trying to fix it or fiddling with it without the power off. You should always shut off the power before working on anything electrical. And even if you install down the road, if you're again unfamiliar with how to like bolt things together and how tight things should be, if they loosen over time, you might assume that everything is well and good, but it can cause an electric shock down the road. So if you are unfamiliar with this work, do not attempt it. This video is meant for entertainment purposes only. You saw that warning at the beginning of the video. As we approach the end of the video, I am just reminding you again to please proceed at your own risk and to not attempt this if you are unfamiliar with this type of work. Thank you. Alright, so here I'm fishing the wires through. So there you see my ground. That on the other side of that is where I bonded the ground or the other part of the fixture. And I'm going to make sure that my wires make it through and that rope makes it through. Again, that rope is so that your insulator isn't rubbing against metal and deteriorates over time. That way the rope ends up deteriorating before the insulator does. And that will prevent any short circuit, like that you could damage without this rope insulator over the plastic insulator that's for the wire. Simply installing, you could damage the wire and cause a short circuit. So we obviously don't want to do that. So you want to preserve this rope or use this rope properly. Here I'm showing you the ground wire, and then I'm going to attach my continuity tester. We're going to test to make sure that ground is okay, and then we're going to test our neutral and our hot to make sure that not only does it not connect to ground? So you don't want continuity to ground. So here's all my grounds. They're working correctly. So then I'm going to put the top back on, because we don't need to take this apart again because the ground test was good. And then we're going to connect and test other parts of the wiring. Alright, so when I test this, the middle, you're going to notice a little nub in the middle. The middle is your hot, the side is your neutral, okay? And then the top is your ground. So I'm going to touch this bolt up here, and that's your ground. So you saw I did not get a light when touching the hot and the neutral. And now I'm making sure that my hot and neutral on the wire aren't shorted out anywhere, and that we have a successful connection and that it will work safely. So now I'm going to attach, I think this is to the hot, yep, to the hot, and then I go to that middle nub in there. I'm sorry that my hand's in the way, but the middle nub, and then we make sure that we have continuity. Then we attach our neutral, and we go to the outside of this light fixture, and then we see that our neutral has continuity. So with these tests, I'm able to tell that the fixture is safe to touch, that I'm not going to ground out, I'm not going to hurt myself. So then we put the LED bulb in, and then we're going to put the glass fixture back in, and then we're going to test this and make sure that it works. Now I did have to finagle the wiring here, but this is a successful conversion of a fixed LED to a incandescent light socket that can accept LED bulbs, CFL, and incandescent bulbs. Guys, if you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe.